A second set of arguments concern Joseph of Arimathea's specific role and intentions. These are seen as evidence of development in the story of Joseph's role, and hence of his fictionality. But how do these arguments stack up? This seems rather strained. Is it to be expected that Joseph would have had or been able to purchase a dirty linen cloth? If that was his goal, he could simply have had one secured from some sort of dump. While Matthew may indeed be stressing the cleanliness of the cloth for emphasis, it was likely already clean in Mark's story. It doesn't make sense to argue such a thing when it's obvious that all members of the Sanhedrin were wealthy men of that era. As with the clean cloth, Matthew may be making a point, but it's presumptuous to think that he is inventing Joseph's wealth entirely. The amount of spices was about 75 pounds, and yes, that was an excessive amount by typical standards of burial in that time. But it's hard to see why this is a problem. Some critics are willing to credit fanaticism for the extent of the disciples fantasizing about the resurrection, and yet they can't seem to concede the possibility of a more limited and practical sort of fanaticism by Nicodemus and Joseph, who would certainly be able to manage the expense. Given that Jesus' death and burial were reckoned as dishonorable, we can see why some writers might have minimized the detail they offered about it. But we can also see why John, the beloved disciple and perhaps related to Jesus by blood, would look beyond the dishonor. So did he just make up the amount of spices to make Jesus look good? While this is theoretically possible, any motive imputed to John for inventing the spices can just as well be imputed to Joseph or Nicodemus on personal grounds as followers of Jesus. Supposing that they wished to offset, however they could, the dishonor of a burial in a non-family tomb. It's also hard to see why there would be no room for 75 pounds of spices when there would be room for 150 pounds worth of body. Those are the best arguments for regarding Joseph of Arimathea as a myth. They're pretty sorry, aren't they? But next up we'll be getting into some nuts and bolts arguments regarding the resurrection. See you next time.